So hello, friends. My name is Agave Garcia, and I work in developer relations.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kanishk Sakrikar. I'm the go-to-market lead for our air quality and pollen APIs on the Google Maps platform.
And today we are super excited to share about the Google Environment APIs for building climate positive impacts. All right, so this will be our current journey starting at the macro level, the Environment API category, and then specifically drill down into the solar, air quality, and pollen APIs. Our last stop will be going just a tiny bit deeper on how to get started and some resources that you can visit. For context, the environment category is a new offering in the Google Maps platform. We will have launched 3 APIs this year as of the recording of this video, but we have more APIs to come, so stay tuned. And for those of you who may be new to the term API, it stands for Application Programming Interface, which basically enables computers to exchange information as services over the internet. Now, with that being said, we have 3 services that I mentioned that will be available this year. Solar and air quality are already out, and pollen is coming very shortly. Let's dive into the solar API first. So here's a beautiful fun fact. The sun produces more energy in 1 hour than all of the world's energy consumption in a year. It can help us provide enough clean energy to power every single home on Earth, without requiring us to use or burn harmful fossil fuels. And according to the International Energy Agency, 60% of new energy is expected to come from solar globally by 2030, which is critical to keep global warming below 2 degrees by the year 2050. However, there are currently several scale-related challenges in the industry. So, for example, it still takes a lot of visits and many manual processes to estimate and design solar systems for homes. Not to mention that we currently do not have the necessary supply of solar technicians for all of this amazing demand. But that's where the Solar API comes in. It's a service that offers solar data and imagery to create solar proposals and designs, which enables the industry to cover more homes faster. The API was designed to support use cases along the entire solar customer funnel, from awareness to acquisition to panel layout and even installation guides. For example, you can leverage the API on your solar website so people can self-service designs and quotes. And for more advanced use cases, you can also use the data to create really detailed panel layouts without having to visit a home in person. Now, the Solar API is based on what we learned from our consumer-facing Project Sunroof, which was made possible thanks to the tender love and care of many folks at Google since 2015. And Sunroof has helped countless of homeowners understand if solar is a good option for them and their home. However, we took a lot of those lessons and took it a bit further and created the API to help industry partners deploy more solar. The API currently offers out-of-the-box roof and solar estimations, but it also offers granular imagery. And I have not been clicking this. Oh, I know, I've been doing it right. Yeah, can you go back just one? Thank you. But yeah, it also offers granular imagery for those folks who want to build their own custom roof solar models. There's currently coverage for over 320 billion buildings in 40 plus countries, and we plan to continuously expand. Just note that the coverage amount for each country shown will vary. But if you wish to dive into the specifics of coverage, please check out our documentation at this link, Google Solar Docs. Now, we built the APIs using high-quality imagery and maps data. We also leveraged AI models and weather information to understand granular things about roofs, such as their slope, possible obstructions with a chimney, or patterns of shade. From there, we return data in 2 formats. The first one is returning raw solar information about a location. This includes an overhead image of a rooftop, a digital surface model of the roof's angle and elevation, as well as its sunniness. Second, we digest this raw information into insights about the building and solar potential, including the size and dimensions of the roof and key solar installation details. The API is made up of two endpoints called Building Insights and Data Layers. Building Insights is considered vector data, and the Data Layers endpoint is considered raster data. For those watching online and may not be familiar with the terms raster or vector data means it's information about a polygon, a line, or a point, and raster data means you get images as pixels. Let's explore each of these endpoints a bit more then. We start with Building Insights, where you pass a lat-long location along with a minimum quality level. Note that there's three types of imagery quality. High and medium come from airplanes, and low quality usually comes from coarser imagery, such as a satellite. With both of these things, you get back information in these four-ish buckets. Location contains information like the postal code or the state or country that address is at, as well as its square meters. Rooftop data offers information about the roof's area, possible area for solar, and granular details about the roof. Solar panel details tells you things like how many different types of solar designs can emerge, how many solar panels can be installed, and what is the possible carbon offset by going solar based on my current utilities usage. And finally, if you work with homes in the US, you can leverage the out-of-the-box financial models that include assumptions on utility rates, cost of installation, estimates on loans and purchases, as well as possible incentives. To assess financial estimates in other countries, you can create your own custom financial model, as I will show in a demo in a bit. The second endpoint is called Data Layers, by which you also pass a location, image quality, and a desired radius. And you can access multiple types of imagery, which can range from just the raw aerial image to the image of just the one roof, to a type of elevation kind of heat map to assess the height of things like trees, as well as the amount of sunshine, which is known as flux for different parts of the year. Do note that the aerial data set is the only one that comes as an image. The rest are numeric data giving information about each pixel. And you combine multiple layers and apply your desired colors in order to visualize them beautifully on a map. The specific output of these layers in data layers, obviously, are URLs of geotiffs, which is a type of image file that contains both image data and geographic location information. Most of the geotiff files are at a resolution of 10 centimeters per pixel, but the monthly sunshine file is at 50 centimeters per pixel. And the hourly shade files are a little bit more coarser. They're 1 meter per pixel. But if a pixel size is specified in the request, then that becomes the minimum resolution of those geotiff files. And just note that these geotiff URLs are valid for just a few hours. Let me show you some examples now. For starters, I recommend taking a picture of the slide. I will also show it at the end of the presentation. The Try Solar link is a web app my peer David and I built so users can play with the API in a visual way. And the second link that says Try Solar code is the GitHub repo for all the code we used to make the web app in case anyone wants to reuse this and build their own web app. Just steal the code. You can also get the code from the web app directly. There, at the bottom of the web app, there's a little GitHub icon which takes you to the code repository, FYI. So using the web app mentioned, let's dive into the Building Insights endpoint. When visiting the app, you can type in an address. This turns into a lat long and begins to display building information. You can see on the left that we created a widget from the information that this endpoint offers us and displays the estimated annual sunshine, the total roof area of that location, the maximum amount of panels to cover one's electricity consumption, as well as the total number of panels that can possibly fit on that roof surface, which may be different than your actual energy usage. And it also includes carbon savings, as well as total energy production. As mentioned before, the Building Insights endpoint also includes financial data for buildings in the US, which helps users weigh their current utility usage versus their investment in solar. So for this building specifically, we can see that the cost of not going solar over a 20-year period, and that's in that chart, tiny little chart, that the cost for not going solar in a 20-year period is $61,000 versus the cost of going solar, which is $25,000. And that around 2029, in 6 years, the cost of not having solar begins to exceed that of solar. For folks outside the US, because there are different government incentive programs in each country, including utility rates, you can really create your own calculations, as we have done so in this web app. So we provided open text fields so that one can manually enter the desired financial assumptions. And if anyone wishes, like I said, leverage the same code we used to make these fields, you can find the demo link I will share again later. Now let's move on to the data layers endpoint. This is an example of us overlaying the aerial imagery that could be from 2016 onto a Google map that is from 2023. Aerial imagery is your standard red, green, blue pixel-based image. You can combine aerial imagery with any of our other data layers in order to create visuals like the ones I will continue to share. This is an example of pairing the roof mask with the aerial imagery. The mask is a model that assesses what is considered as a roof in this location. Next is the digital surface model, also known as DSM, which is like a heat map. And it can help you visualize what is higher than the roof, like a tree, or maybe there's a chimney compared to this flat part of the roof. And again, you can combine this with aerial and use any beautiful palette of colors to really make it pop. This is an example of hourly shade, and in the demo, we have this playing as an ongoing animation, so you can actually produce a GIF animation if you wanted to see where shade gets created on the roof throughout the day for a specific date as well. The pixels for this layer are a bit coarser, as I mentioned earlier. Then there's annual flux. Flux basically just means sunshine. So this is a layer you can combine with the digital surface model and aerial and get these really stunning visuals of the average behavior of the sun. You can also get as granular as monthly assessments of the sun's behavior and create animated GIFs, like I showed you with the shade. It is a bit of math, by the way, but again, we've shared the code in case anyone wishes to reuse it. And this is my final example of when you combine both Building Insights endpoint with data layers, and you can get just really beautiful visuals with solar panel placements on top of whatever layer, and they can change dynamically based on the data a user enters about their energy or financial needs. And here's that slide again. I will share it once more at the end when we get to resources, but now I'll pass it on to my friend Kanish to talk more about the air quality and Pollen APIs.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Now that we've looked at Solar API, let's take a quick look at the air quality API on the Google Maps platform. Before we get into the API itself, I wanted to share this survivability rule of 3 that I read up online. Take that with a grain of salt. It takes about 3 weeks without food for a human. A human can survive for 3 weeks without food. They can survive 3 days without water. But for air, after the 3rd minute itself, permanent brain damage starts. And that's just how important air is to everything else that we do in this world. According to WHO, 99% of the population is breathing air that is above the limits. That's not a typo. It's actually true that the WHO says 99% of us are breathing air that is above the safety standards. There are more than 8 million deaths every year specifically linked to air pollution. All of this is a big healthcare cost, and it's estimated roughly around $8 trillion globally is spent in and around air quality. It's no wonder that air quality is all in the news, and there's year after year more interest in this area. So what makes measuring air quality so very complicated, right? For that, we need to first look at what causes air quality. Air pollution can be caused from a wide range of sources. They can be local, like a fire nearby, or it could be global, like desert sand going from one part of the world to the other. What's also interesting is that air quality changes several times during the day. So it's not a static number that you can see for one day in the morning and be rest assured that that's what's going to stay. It is very, very dynamic, and hence it cannot be accurately modeled using standard methods. Let's take a step back in terms of what we're talking about here. What are those pollutants that we're talking about, right? So on the right-hand side, you will see, for comparison, a strand of hair that's roughly around 20 to 180 micrometers. The two most common types of pollutants, PM 10 micron, which is anything less than 10 microns, and then there is PM particulate matter 2.5 micrometers, roughly 30 times smaller than the size of the hair, average hair. Here's where the Google Maps platform's air quality API comes in. This is part of Google's commitment in making reliable, relevant environmental data accessible to the masses. With air quality, we're not only able to provide accurate data, but you're also able to provide intuitive heat map capabilities that can directly be integrated on any Google Maps surface. These are very, very easy to integrate into any other solution that you might have already present, or for you to build net new solutions from scratch. This data is available over 100 plus countries at a granularity of 500 meters and refreshed on an hourly basis. This is done by stitching together over 70 different air quality indexes and also providing one global uniform air quality index to measure everything on one scale. Here are some of the features for the air quality index. For one, we provide in-depth information around different pollutants, highlighting the dominant pollutant, its concentration, its sources, and its effects. So it's not just one big number that's being offered. You get the big number, but you also get details into what's causing that air quality index number that we are seeing. As I mentioned before, we also provide hourly history for a specific location, so you can monitor trends. So not just what's happening right now, but also what happened for the last 30 days on an hourly basis. We also provide a heat map in case you don't want to use just raw numbers. You want to take tiled heat map dimensions and just overlay them on any other map surface that you might have. We also provide health tips and recommendations because we know air quality impacts different people differently. Something that is acceptable for the general population might not be the case for the elderly, might not be the case for people with lung diseases or any other ailments, definitely not for children. So depending on who you are, you'll get customized recommendations that are going to help you take the necessary action. We're also looking into forward-looking projections. So it's good that we know what's happening right now. We know what's happened in the past, but very soon we're looking to have some sort of forecasting capabilities as well, so that you can predict and plan for the future. It's no surprise that exposure to air quality, air pollution during your daily commutes can have a drastic impact on our lives. Imagine a scenario where your vehicle is automatically being updated or is providing you alerts about possible air pollutants down your route. You could either choose to take a different route or choose to automatically start recycling the air inside your car itself. Similarly, imagine a scenario where your smart home is connected to one of these air quality data points. The minute air quality goes below a certain threshold, your windows close, your air purifier automatically is turned on. So how does this actually work, right? In order to accurately calculate air quality up to the resolution of 500 meters over 100 countries on an hourly basis, we pull information from numerous data sources like government air quality sensors, traffic patterns, satellite data, active wildfires that might be happening nearby, other meteorological information, and more. We then integrate numerous models, one on top of the other, multiple algorithms, over 30 plus of them running simultaneously to create billions of pollutant concentrations with high accuracy on an hourly basis. In layman's terms, we are stitching together multiple data points together and filling in the blanks wherever possible to get the most accurate, complete picture that might be out there. As I mentioned, we're not just providing one big score, we're also providing a detailed list of all the various pollutants. A pollutant that might be very, very heavy in one part of the world might not be the case somewhere else. So it's not only important that you know what your score is, it's just that important to know which pollutant is causing that score and what do you do about it. The actual endpoints that we offer, there are 3 of them. The first one is the current condition, updated hourly, as I mentioned. There's a 30-day look-back window in case you want to look at what's been happening over time. This is, again, available on an hourly basis. And then the heat map tiles that I mentioned that can easily be integrated on any surface that you might have. Now let's quickly look at the demo on how this would actually show up on a client's or a customer's surface. A user could go on a map and select any one location out of the 100 countries that I mentioned, and you would be shown a score similar to this, which tells you if it's good, if it's bad, if it's great air quality, so on and so forth. As I mentioned, you are able to get a one simple score across the globe, but you also have specific indexes. So America might have one index for themselves. APAC might have another index. Somewhere in France, you might have another index. Each of these indexes have their own scales. So one can go from 1 to 100. The other one could be 1 to 500. The Universal Air Quality Index, the Universal AQI, that's giving one number all over the world. But at the same time, if you're only interested in your specific location's index, you're able to request that data as well. For example, the US EPA Air Quality Index score goes from 0 to 500. Hong Kong government's Air Quality Index goes from 1 to 10. So there's a lot of aligning different metrics that goes into these calculations. You're also able to, at the same time, see individual pollutants. And if you hover over the I button out there, as you can see, you'll be able to know what this pollutant is, what are its causes, what are its specific effects on the human body, and that can help us take the necessary actions either from a preventive standpoint to avoid the pollutants from being generated in the first place, or now that they are out in the air, what do you need to do as an individual to actually stay safe? As I mentioned, we provide health recommendations so that you can take the appropriate actions needed. The recommendations are tailored for the general population, as well as 6 other at-risk populations who have greater sensitivity to the pollutants than the general audience. We have an hourly look-back window as well in case somebody is looking for air quality over time. This data is available for over 30 days, location-based. So depending on different locations, you can get different historical views. And the pollutant concentration is also available. So everything that you could get more or less for the current conditions, you're also able to get for a look-back of 30 days. This is one use case demo for a potential travel app, for example, where you have two different routes and a user can choose one that has higher air quality or lower air quality. Depending on the availability of this data, hikers, bikers can take the appropriate action as to not just the steep of the hike or the incline or the difficulty or the length of the location, but also what kind of air quality he or she might encounter on the hike itself. That was it for the air quality API. Now let's look at the third and very soon to be released Pollen API on the Google Maps platform. I've been talking a lot, so let's mix things up a bit. Show of hands here, how many people think that allergies are getting worse year after year? I think that's quite unanimous. I will raise my hand as well. My wife and I both grew up in India. Growing up, we never heard of allergies too much. But fast forward now, I have a 4-year-old son, and every year from September to November, at least half of his class is out because of some allergies or some pollen-related infection. And it's basically, I would be conservative in saying that it's half of his class. I'm in New Jersey, and that happens every year between spring and fall time. Here's some numbers on why pollen is important. About 400 million people in the world suffer from allergic rhinitis. That's hay fever. In the US alone, that number is over 80 million. We're also seeing 20% pollen concentration, the sheer volume of pollen in the air, going up by 20% year over year, specifically linked to human activity-related climate change. The increasing potency, length, and general unpredictability of the pollen seasons worldwide means accurate pollen forecast has become an essential part of allergy management for many. But the value of pollen data extends beyond traditional means of capturing this information, which is typically delayed and highly manual in nature. Allergy seasons are getting worse. We have data to back that up. So everybody who thought that, pat yourselves. The seasons are getting harder to predict. Traditional methods of pollen reporting are very manual, time-consuming, and often the results come out long after when you actually need them. And that's where a real-time data solution like this can really help take informed actions. It's also not the same as one big term, pollen being a catch-all phrase. There are different types of pollen allergens, and within them specifically there are three. There's tree pollen, there's weed pollen, and there's grass pollen. Within them, there are different types of trees. This is something that I learned after taking my son to the allergenist, that there are so many different varieties. I always thought of pollen as one big thing, but now there's a wide range of varieties, and what affects you might be very different from what affects somebody else. So you need to know what is it that affects you, and how much is it actually going to impact you. How this pollen API works is that it uses various inputs like the land cover, how is that changing over time, what is the climatological data, how much is the total volume of pollen that's out in the air right now, what are the weather patterns that are impacting it, so how far is the pollen actually going to travel, and where is it going to be concentrated versus where is it going to be staying in one location itself, what time is it actually going to peak, and how fast is the drop-off actually going to take place. By stitching together all these data points, we're able to provide meaningful information like the universal index, the universal pollen index. So basically a number which is very easy for you to read if this is too high or this is too low. You can also provide information around your exposure risks. So the number might be high, but you might not be out and about at that time of the day. So the risk of you being exposed is on the lower side. We can also provide actionable insights similar to the air quality API, where different people are impacted differently. And so there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution that everybody should apply. And we can also provide heat maps, just like the air quality API, where you don't need to do a lot of manual coding work on your side to actually make use of this data. You can download the heat maps and directly layer them on any map surface that you have on your website, on your app, or however it is you want to get the message out. These are the key features that the Pollen API offers. At the very first thing, we're able to provide forecast for up to 5 days, so today and 4 more days of what you can expect across 65 countries. As I mentioned, we also have a heat map that can very easily be embedded in any Google Maps solution that you have on offer. We are also able to provide plant level information. So you have 3 categories. You have plant, you have weed, you have grass, but specifically within plants, you can tell which plants are actually causing it, and I'll show you all in the demo what that looks like. This is important because different people are allergic to different trees or different plants, and hence knowing what is it that you care about or what is really going to trigger your reactions is very, very valuable information. We're also able to provide multiple indexes. As I mentioned, there is a universal pollen index. That's the big number at the top across all allergens. But you are also able to look at specific indexes just for plant, just for weed, just for trees, if that is what you really care about. And we also have tailored recommendations for what you should do to improve your symptoms. As I mentioned, we have 3 main pollen types, so you'll be able to get indexes across each of these: trees, grasses, and weeds. Within them further down, you also have 15 different plant species that you can get this data for individually by a plant-by-plant basis. One big call out here is that, as you all can probably guess, not all plants are available everywhere in the world. So depending on which part of the world you are, you would get information for that specific location. And this can vary from one country to another. This is the overall coverage of where we have pollen data right now. And our teams are working hard on including more pollen, including more plant types and more coverage, and also expanding from a geographical standpoint. The 2 endpoints that are available for the Pollen API, the 2 ways that you can get data for the Pollen API, one is the forecast, which gives you a 5-day count of how much pollen there is available, almost in an index format across the various plants. And you also have the heat map that can give you an image tile that can be displayed on top of a Google map. Let's have a look at the demo really quick. Using the Pollen API, you are able to create visualizations like these, where you can see for weed, for grass, for trees, what the number is. Depending on what you select, you'll be able to get a score. Right now, for weed, it's 1 out of 5. But if you were to select grass, you might have a different number showing up. Similarly, for trees, there would be a different number coming in there as well. We're also able to provide health recommendations. So depending on what the number is right now, you can have active recommendations on what you should be doing. We're able to provide this for the general population and also, I believe, 6 other at-risk categories. This could include kids, elderly, people with respiratory issues, so on and so forth. As I mentioned, you can get right down to the plant level. So not just knowing that there's a weed count is very, very high, which plant within the weed category is the one that's causing it is just as important. So you'll be able to get a number specifically for a plant and what are its sources, how can you deal with it, what are the effects that you can expect. Here's a view of the forecast. So not just what's going to happen today, but what's going to happen tomorrow, day after, for the next 4 days as well. Similar to the air quality API, if you are an avid hiker or a biker, or you just commute from one place to the other using your car, this pollen information can help you choose which route to take to not just look at the distance or the weather or the coverage or the foliage, but also what kind of pollen levels you might expect on the route. You could imagine a scenario where on your next Google Maps listing, you have the shortest way to go somewhere, the fastest way to go somewhere, and the cleanest way to go somewhere. So there could be like 3 routes for you to choose from depending on what you care the most about. There are individual use cases for the air quality API and the pollen API, but there's also a lot of overlap because a person who is interested in making sure that they are up to date with how the air quality is around them would also be interested in what kind of allergens there might be out there as well. So this could be one example of how air quality and pollen can be used simultaneously to give a much more holistic view of what the current surroundings are and what they can expect. You can have alerts for specific thresholds. So if air quality goes above X, send me a notification or something like that. You can have heat maps on your routing. So while your GPS is on and you're going from place A to place B, you can see the air quality changing over time. You could have specific recommendations being sent over almost in a proactive manner, as opposed to you having to check and then trying to find more information about it. And you can offer almost like a value add that is beyond the typical, here's the best way to go from place A to place B. You're actually offering something that's net new, that is above and beyond what a typical mapping solution might offer. Some of the industries where this can find value, as I mentioned, the smart homes and buildings. Healthcare has very real world applications, both around scientific research, so macro level research on how these patterns are changing over time and what to do about them, but also individual patient level information. Imagine a patient that has an app that tells them, hey, it's going to be a high pollen count outside this day. You might as well either stay indoors or pack your allergy medication. In the travel industry, where you can imagine the next time you're trying to book a trip, it also tells you not just the cost of the flight tickets to get there, but also whether the air quality is going to be high or low. Or if you're going to some place with high pollen count, you might get proactive notifications from the hotel or from the airline company almost during the time of check-in saying, hey, don't forget, you're going to a place that has high allergy count. Have you packed your allergy medication? Governments can take action at scale based on how they see trends changing over time. Having access to data is step 1 in trying to act to correct the necessary changes. Big tech, media, weather forecasting, or weather sites could definitely use this data as well. Real estate, in terms of where you buy your next house, can have a big impact. Even the developers themselves can figure out whether to choose location A or location B based on the kind of people that they're going after. Insurance companies can also look at this to assess risk and management and inform their customers to take necessary actions. So all this was about the 2 APIs, the 3 APIs actually. Now, how do you actually get started? I know a lot of you all are dying to get your hands on these APIs. I can just see it. But just to quickly give you all a quick sneak peek on what you can do next in order to taste what these APIs do and how they work. All you need to do is go to mapsplatform.google.com. There you will find the APIs, all the documentation around it, all the information that you might need to get started. This does fall under the core Google Maps platform APIs. So anybody who's using it for testing purposes, you have $200 worth of free credit. There are special programs for nonprofits, startups, educational institutions, and crisis responses. And we just roughly did the math for how many API calls you can make for the $200 worth of free monthly credit that you have. And then we also have a calculator on the site. So if you have a rough indication of how much you would be requiring, you'll be able to use the calculator to try to figure out how much that's going to look like. And with that, I'm handing it over back to Agave.
Thank you, Kanish. So to get started in using the APIs, you are going to need to create a Google Cloud project, which is a cloud computing suite. And it has many free tiers for different computing products. You could always check that out further on the Google Cloud homepage as well. You then log into the Google Cloud console, and you would enable the environment API of your choice. Pollen is coming soon. And you will need to create an API key, or you can leverage OAuth for either endpoints. Just note that using one of those layers of security is required to use the APIs. And OAuth, just as a reminder, it's that would you like to sign in with your Google account option. As a friendly reminder, since we are talking about services that communicate over the internet, it's important to note that the Solar and Pollen APIs are GET requests, which are used to read data, while the Air Quality API does POST requests. And finally, if you wish to learn more about the APIs on a technical level, this is another worthy slide for taking a picture. These are the links to our short self-service educational demos. They're about like 5-6 pages long, where you get to like really just beautifully rich visuals. For those of you who are watching the recording later, we have included these links in the video description. And here's that slide again for the Solar web app, which is less about education and more to actually play with the API or to reuse its code for Solar specifically. And finally, if you wish to stay connected with what's happening with the environment APIs, follow our 2 YouTube channels called Google Earth as well as Google Maps platform. And that's a quick walkthrough of the environment APIs. We look forward to seeing what beautiful climate positive apps people will make with these APIs. Kanishka, any final words?
Nothing. Just thank you so much for your time and choosing to be here to learn more.
Thank you.
Thank you.